Looking back at the series now, with a post 9/11 view of the world, things like In the Shadows of Doom, for example, where Gordon is subject to indefinite detention for all of about 6 hours, prompting the mass insurrection among the command staff, seems almost quaint. How do you think the show would have been different if it had been done in 2003 versus 1996?
Well, a lot of the show politically is as relevant now as it was then. Particularly if you look at things like indefinite detention and the Clark tendency to ignore civil rights by creating a fear of a much greater object off to the side of the civilization. But when I mentioned last night at the smaller panel I was on, that after we did Babylon 5, I got a call from Bruce Boxleitner, who was at the White House with his wife at the time, Melissa Gilbert, who was then the president of SAG, Screen Actors Guild. And in the middle of this, she was there to meet with other representatives and lobby on the White House. And in the middle of all this, Rove came rushing into the room and said, right past her, right to Bruce, said, I want you to know Babylon 5 is the best science fiction show ever made. And the president thinks so too. Which really depressed the hell out of me. And we did, he learned a lot from it, but then President Clark was the bad guy. And yeah, we did kind of set in place the template for the 5-year arc. In fact, David Lindelof, who was a casual friend of mine, mentioned that when they sat down to do Lost, they used the Babylon 5 model to create the arc for that story. So the funny thing, of course, is that now everyone's doing it or trying to do it. I had a meeting at Network not long ago where I was talking about a 5-year story that I wanted to do, a 5-year arc, and the guy who didn't know my background well said, well, you know, a lot of people come in here and say they want to do 5-year arcs, but they don't tend to pull it off really well. What makes you think you can do it? I said, I invented the motherfucker.